Hi, everybody. I am so excited about this very special episode of the Awaken Way podcast. It's all about healing miracles. As a medium, I thought my main task was to help people communicate with those who have passed. Little did I know when I started interacting with my guide, Sanaya, that they would help me be a conduit for healing. I never thought that I would be somebody talking about healing miracles, but I've experienced several of those as I work with my guides, and they say it's simply going to get better as I've learned to hold their energy and trust that they're doing the healing. So, what we're going to do today is see two testimonials from people who attended one of my Awaken Way cruises and experienced very unexpected healing miracles. This first one was as much a surprise to the recipient as it was to me and to his wife. You're going to hear from Randall Scott, an attorney with some pretty high credentials that show skeptics that you don't have to believe in healing to be healed. I think you're going to love hearing how he went along on the cruise to make his wife happy and to have fun on the cruise, but promised to only attend 2 sessions, and then he was off the hook if he didn't like what he was hearing or learning. Well, within those first 2 sessions, he experienced a physical healing from an ailment that was labeled terminal by the medical professionals around him. So enjoy this talk from Randall. He says it much better than I could. Then I'm going to come back and introduce the second healing miracle that I know you will enjoy. So check this out.
My name is Randall Scott. We live in Gainesville, Virginia. It's now August of 2025. This is the first time I've been in my wife's meditation angel room for more than 1 minute in the last 14 years, but I thought it was a good place to tell the story. 3.5 years ago, I was having trouble breathing, a lot of trouble. It was hard for me to walk across the room without running out of breath. I was coughing a fair amount. So I had a high resolution CT scan read by a pulmonologist, and he explained to me that I had idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF. IPF is a serious lung disease. It causes scar tissue to grow in your lungs, and it makes it harder and harder to breathe over time. It is a progressive disease. It doesn't get better. The average survival from the time you are diagnosed is 3 to 5 years. That was 3 years ago. There's no cure for IPF. Oftentimes, people end up having to go on oxygen to assist their breathing. He said I was lucky to have survived the flare up, as he called it, a couple of months ago. I didn't know until I researched it recently that these flare-ups usually last 3 to 13 days, and the fatality rate is up to 85% of the cases that have the flare-ups. Since that time, 2 years have passed, and until last spring, I had a second flare-up. Fortunately, I was able to come through, and several weeks of multiple doses of prednisone and recovery. At that time, the pulmonologist said I probably needed to go on supplemental oxygen if I wanted to take short walks with a dog. But being stubborn, I went to see another pulmonologist last summer in 2024. She said I should go to pulmonary rehab classes at Fairfax Hospital. At my first visit, they had me do a 6-minute walk test, but they had to stop the test 4.5 minutes in because of my high pulse rate and my low oxygen levels. They immediately called the doctor's office, and 2 days later, I ended up with equipment called an oxygenator, where you put tubes into your nose You sling a bag over your shoulder and you go for a walk and rest as needed. I wore sunglasses, a cap. I avoided, to the extent I could, by meeting people, by going through back paths when I walked the dog for that 2/3 of a mile. So from last fall of 2024 until March of this year, I wore the oxygenator and daily. My wife suggested going on a cruise because she wanted to hear Suzanne Giesemann. She had one condition, however, for going on the cruise, to which I decided to agree. She stated that I needed to attend the first 2 sessions and that afterwards I could go ahead and relax, enjoy the meals, a drink or two, do some reading. I didn't bring the oxygenator along with me on that trip, that cruise, because I knew that the levels on a cruise ship are easy walking and that I could rest whenever I needed to along the way when we went from our room to maybe one of the events on board ship. Plus, there were elevators. So we went on the cruise, and the next day, the real story begins. On the first day of the cruise, Suzanne said, as she started the session, you know, there's always one attorney in the room, and they always want proofs. And I chuckled to myself because, well, yes, I was almost a professional student. In 8 years of going to school, I finished up college, jammed myself through Harvard Law, got a master's degree from Wharton, another from London School of Economics, and went to night school at Boston University to get my 3rd one. So having said that, proof and facts are what my life has tended to be about. Well, that was the first session. And as I said, I chuckled. We went to the afternoon session. I was fascinated with what Suzanne had to say, but I wanted to listen, and then I would be free of my 2-session commitment. She put us into a guided meditation. I have no idea what happened, none. The meditation, I never do meditation. I don't do yoga. I don't do non-fact stuff. Maggie poked me and nudged me, and I woke up and I said, Maggie, what just happened? I don't understand. At the end of the session, we had managed to have to go down to the early first rows because the seating was limited where we normally sat. So we went down there and I figured, well, I'll make my way up. At the end of the session, Maggie went ahead of me and I walked up the steps, not really noticing that everything was good. I was breathing great. I didn't have to stop. I wasn't coughing. There was nothing. We got to the top and I saw Suzanne's assistant. I think her name is Bev. And I said, Bev, something happened. I don't know exactly what. Well, it turns out I was interested, and I went ahead and went to the rest of the sessions over the duration of the cruise, and eventually got back home. I got out my oxygenator for the first 2 days, walked the dog. The 3rd day I was in a hurry, and I literally forgot the oxygenator, and I walked. And I came back and I said, Maggie, I don't think I need the oxygenator anymore. And that was in early April. And from early April to early August, I never used the oxygenator again. I was able to walk easily, breathe well, and I had another CAT scan done, standing order from the pulmonologist. I went to see the pulmonologist last week. He said, there has been no progression of your disease since the prior CAT scan, and your airways are clear, and your breathing is in the normal range. What did you do? And I told them, I don't know. I went to a meditation session and this happened, and everything seems fine now. With that, I wrote Suzanne an email and thanked her. I said I was full of gratitude and I was at peace. And things went well. I appreciate it. I don't know what else to say. And she wrote back and said, well, you can do me a favor. You can record what happened and send it to me. And I said, okay, I will. I got a gift from you, and I think it's Sanaya, and now I need to pay it forward. I hope it helps other people, but the one thing I've learned is that there's more to life than we really know or can acknowledge. There is a communication, if you will, a connection, a series of interconnections almost beyond our ken. I would say too, it reawakened an interest in me of quantum physics. And Einstein 100 years ago said he couldn't explain quantum physics. The interconnections, the entanglement, the multi-dimensions, the multivariate universes that may exist that we aren't fully aware of. And he was reluctant to acknowledge that. He simply concluded it's spooky action at a distance. And it is a spooky result. I'm glad for it. It's wonderful. I hope that helps some people going forward.
Wasn't that special? I'm so grateful that Randall was willing to go public with this, to make that beautiful testimonial. It still stuns me how spirit works, and to think of him walking around without needing the oxygen to be able to go up and down stairs. Ty saw him with us on the cruise ship, just stunned the way he was able to go up and down stairs instead of taking the elevator. And I love that he waited several months to be able to get actual medical test results and prove that a healing had taken place. Now, this next one happened on the same cruise. As you heard from Randall, he was just thought he fell asleep in one of the very first meditations that I led on the ship. It was a guided meditation where I always let my guides Sanaya take over. But for this second healing that you're going to hear from Liz, this took place after I had given a discussion about my channeled session called The Journey of Remembrance. The Journey of Remembrance is on YouTube. Anybody can listen to it. It's also a gift on my website. This is a piece that I channeled while in a music studio with a wonderful composer, Richard Schulman. Neither one of us knew what was going to happen, but we both felt called to sit together and create something beautiful with spirit. And it truly is beautiful. It's my go-to anytime I'm totally out of sorts or out of balance and just need to remember who we all are as souls. and the spirits in the journey of remembrance took us through the 7 sacred aspects of the soul, as they called it, a very spontaneous channeling that's been out for several years. But I was guided on my recent cruise to talk people through line by line of the transcript of that channeling, something I had only done once before in one of my Shift Network courses. So we took about, I'd say, an hour to go through that half-hour channeled session with me on stage and the audience listening. But my guide Sanaya took over the discussion. So the discussion of channeling was channeled for the audience. It was really quite the experience. And then after that hour discussion, I was surprised when my guide said, now we will all listen to the actual recording together. I sat on stage and we started the recording. It came through the speakers in the theater. And I have to tell you, I was actually feeling rather uncomfortable because to me, it seemed very repetitious. We had just spent an hour on this recording and now we all had to listen to the words again. But as we settled into it, and people could have their eyes open or closed, it didn't matter. I felt Sanaya's presence so strongly, and they said to me, we will send healing energy to everyone. And my hand went up automatically, and I allowed it to be guided as I could tell that Spirit was sending healing energy through me to whoever needed it in the audience. And there was one point where the power was so strong, it pushed me back in the chair, and I knew something special was happening. In fact, my assistant Melissa was there, and she felt it. She saw that moment, and she knew that, again, something powerful was happening. So it was really humbling a little while later for Melissa to come up to me, and she said, Suzanne, there's a woman in the group named Liz who has had severe back pain for 20 years, and she says the pain is gone. I was thrilled to hear this, but I wanted to hear it from Liz herself. And so Liz very kindly offered to give a testimonial several days later once she was sure that this was not just a temporary thing. She had been healed. And I know that the guide's healing is what did it, because I couldn't deny what I experienced as well. So enjoy Liz's testimonial of her healing miracle.
Hi, my name is Liz, and I'm here to tell a story about my experience of healing aboard the Reflection Celebrity Cruise with Suzanne Giesemann. So about 20 years ago, I was training to be a figure skater and had a few horrendous falls with my jumps to the extent that I injured my spine with a herniated disc, which led me to hospital, major surgery as an emergency, and nearly left me paralyzed the rest of my life. For the next 20 years, I have been living on painkillers and crutches as needed, wheelchair as needed, and unable to walk more than probably 10 to 20 footsteps without being in pain, unable to sit more than 15 minutes at a time, and requiring 16 hours lying flat every night, only being up 4 hours a day in order to lay flat and give my back a rest that gives me the strength to move forward to the next day. Yesterday we had this healing session led by Suzanne, and I didn't know it would touch me. I just prayed that it would help the people that needed to be helped. And it went on for a while, and it was when Suzanne moved her hand like this, I knew that she was with the source. I knew, although I couldn't feel it, and I couldn't feel it, I knew that that was coming over everyone. And I knew that she was connected, and through that connection, I knew that all of us were connected. When I left the session, at first I didn't know, but I came to realize I left without being in pain. And where I usually take maximum painkillers 3 or 4 times a day, I didn't need one after the session. And more than that, the next day, when we had an excursion on port, I was able to walk, and it's the first time I've been able to walk without pain, without being on a painkiller all day in the last 20 years. And I believe that whatever happened in that healing session somehow affected me. And although it's unbelievable, I just want to say it's true. I want to say it's true that there's a source. I want to say it's true that there is a connection that we can focus out to help others. And I want to say it's true that Suzanne created that and led that to happen in my life. And thank you.
Isn't that something? It gives me truth shivers or God bumps every time I listen to these testimonials. And again, I'm just so grateful to Spirit for using me as the conduit. But you know, all of us are capable of being Spirit's conduit. In fact, every month in my monthly connection webinars, we do a healing where we all send healing to each other. And it's truly amazing. I always follow that with channeling from Sanaya to really amplify that energy. I know that when we're in large groups, like on the cruise, like in my workshops or the monthly connection, that amplification of energy, the group belief in miracles and what is possible really helps to make these miracles come true. So I know that some of you are asking, why do some people get miracles and other people don't? And that goes right back to one of the daily messages I got for my, it's on the Awaken Way app. I just got it earlier this week, that we don't always have the bigger picture. Sometimes healing takes place across the veil. Sometimes our crossing of the veil, if we didn't receive a healing miracle, allows those here to grow even more. We just don't know, but we learn to trust. And I know that these two stories do show us that miracles are possible. And that gives us all hope. That shows all of us that we are part of something so much greater. That encourages us to ask for miracles, to hope for miracles, and to notice them when they do happen. So as far as healing, just a couple weeks ago, I published on this podcast a video with a guided healing meditation that carries Sanaya's energy, healing with Spirit's help. So if you don't know about that video, go check it out after this one's over. Healing with Spirit's help carries that same energy. But just know that healing doesn't happen to some people because they're more special than others. It's all, we call it a God thing. And we don't always have, as I say, that higher viewpoint. But I hope that hearing these two stories has helped you to know that we all share that same source and we can celebrate with others and just celebrate that love truly does heal. Thank you for joining us for this special episode. We'll see you back here next week.